This is Beyond Business. Witness the real lives of Cranbrook's female entrepreneurs as they candidly tell their stories, their experiences, and their struggles in raw, revealing conversations. I am surrounded by a community of women who work in my community and are at the helm of their businesses. And it's such an honor to be able to hear their stories because it's not just their work, it's their life. And the way that they're choosing to live their life, the way that they're choosing to do their work is inspiring, and it offers so much opportunity for us to be able to see growth. And I'm so honored to be able to hear and share these stories with you. I'm so excited to have Michelle here today. We met the first time a couple years ago when you had moved into this area. And I didn't know it at the time, but when you moved, you had left a business, and that business is the Peacock Boutique, which is still in Calgary. Now, a little bit about this business. This is something that was a legacy business. So there have now been, or there are 4 owners of this business, and you were all women.
Yep.
So the first person that opened the Peacock Boutique brought this store to Calgary, and it was the first consignment store in Calgary. Like, can we just say that? Like, that is cool that was a part of your legacy. And it went from that owner to your mother.
Yeah.
And your mother ran the Peacock Boutique for 25 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And after she stopped running it, you took it over and you ran the business for a decade.
Another decade.
On top of the 25 years that your mom had it. You expanded it into multiple locations in Calgary, had 3 stores, and were living your best life in Calgary.
Yeah.
Surrounded by incredible fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're here.
Yeah.
You are in the Kootenays. And do I call you a YouTube farmer? I don't know what the word is, but you have completely changed your life.
Yeah.
You've completely changed your business model.
Mm-hmm.
And you're now running a business that's based on the life that you've created on your homestead, which is the Thai Life Homestead, is I think the name that you've given this new life of yours.
Yeah, exactly. We basically we moved out here, completely changed our lives, and then basically branded our lives. I guess you could say, because we've got the YouTube channel, and then we have our Veggie Co, the Thai Life Veggie Co. So started growing veggies, and we're going to continue to grow veggies because we're basically building like a sustainable farming situation on our almost 4 acres. And yeah, I want to be able to sell veggies and YouTube about it.
I love talking with you about the farm because it gives me the giggles, because most of what you were doing, you had no idea what to do when you showed up.
No.
And I think that is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you had this notion, this passion, and you just went for it.
I did. Especially James, like I planted a few things when I lived in the city and grew up. My grandma was a big gardener, but she didn't teach me how to garden. I just watched her garden and mostly just snacked on raspberries and carrots from the garden. But something must have ingrained in me because if you see what I have out there, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on, and I'm growing some amazing stuff out there. And when I tell people that, like right now, this is my 3rd year gardening, their eyes just about pop out of their head. Like they can't believe that I'm doing what I'm doing. So I don't even really know how it happened. I just really wanted to move away from the city, have some property, grow my own food, have some chickens, and see what happens. And that's exactly what we're doing.
And it's a beautiful property.
Yes.
Having been out there, you guys, it's incredible the things that you've done, and the rammed earth piece and the garden, like, and the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
It feels so bizarre to say, but those are beautiful birds.
I know. They're not food. They're friends, not food. because James and I are vegetarians. So I treat my chickens probably a lot different than most people do. They're very pampered. They all have names. And I think we started with four. When we first moved, I think we were about 3 months in, and our friend Paul um, showed up in the back of his truck. He had four chickens in a cardboard box, and we had a really bad chicken coop that was on the property. Well, it just hadn't been used in about 20 years.
Right.
And I had no idea what I was doing with the chickens and just had to figure that out really fast because he literally showed up with four chickens. And now we've expanded to, I think my nephew counted 32.
32
Yeah.
birds because
Yeah.
you hatch.
Yeah, we hatch them out on site.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
I'm not going to stop the girls from hatching out their babies. It's actually hatching out the babies is one of the funnest things that I've ever done with chickens. It's amazing.
Mm.
Just to watch them be hatched and the moms take care of them. It's so cute.
Well, and there's this new phenomenon that's happening in farming.
Mm.
And it's an opportunity that we have because we have so much access to knowledge and resources and because of the times that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to be grandfathered into farming.
No.
And there are so many farmers that are showing up and doing things that they have no business doing
Absolutely.
or no understanding, and they're going for it. And what is amazing is what's coming out of that is new ways of farming, which I
Yeah.
think look more like old ways of farming.
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah.
if I'm explaining that, rather than running down these ways that we farmed in a more industrial way for
Mm-hmm.
the however many years, people are really want to be in connection with the food that they're eating.
Oh, big time. And I had no idea how much until I opened my farm stand last summer, and the amount of people that were coming and wanting to know where their food came from and wanting to buy eggs from me because they drive by and they see my chickens foraging in our property and they want chickens that are doing that, to eat the eggs from chickens that are doing that. It's really amazing how big that has become with people that you wouldn't technically expect. And I think that's just because the quality of the food in the grocery store is just so bad. Like, I think if anybody has any sort of taste for food or quality of food, you can see that. And I mean, the price of food as well. But yeah, the people are starting to like, there's a lot of people that have chickens that you would never expect to have chickens, even just backyard chickens in outskirts of big cities. And in terms of finding information, I hate to tell you this, but YouTube taught me pretty much everything I know.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of stuff that's not true, but I've had to learn how to deal with tons of issues, like health issues with chickens. I've brought chickens back from near death experiences literally by Googling and watching videos on YouTube and Google. So, yeah, the
I believe
information
it.
is out there and anybody can do it, really.
Well, I believe it because when we first started ranching cattle,
Hmm.
we had no clue what we were doing,
That's
and
what Joe said. Yeah.
we learned from YouTube.
Yeah.
And there was this one time where it was calving season,
Yeah.
and it might have been our first or second calving season. And again, we had no idea what we were doing.
Hmm.
And Jody had watched this video about when the calf is born and the sack is still around the calf,
Hmm.
what to do. And so he's watching YouTube videos because that's how we're learning how to farm.
Hmm.
And then we're calving, and that's exactly what happens. So he knew because he had just watched that video
Yeah.
the day before that he had to like swing the calf in this like crazy like
Yeah.
and so he does what he watched on YouTube,
Yeah.
and then the calf is alive and everything's well. Like,
I
it's
know.
such a different time.
It really is.
But what I love about it is I think it's giving people freedom to explore because they don't have these preconceived ideas of what farming should look like or feel like.
Hmm.
Because
Absolutely.
the messaging has always been you need a lot of land, you need a lot of equipment, you're
Hmm.
going to have to work all the time, and it's
Hmm.
not going to pay well.
Yeah.
Like, that's the traditional model of
Yeah.
farming.
Or you have to be born into it and learn from your dad and your grandpa and all of these things. And that's something that's kind of cool about our YouTube channel, is that we're really open about the fact that we've never done any of this before, but we're doing it. And I really feel like that has inspired a lot of people to even just start growing tomatoes on their balcony, like, and that's why we do the YouTube, to be perfectly honest, just to show people like, look, we're just two cats from the city. Like we've run businesses before, but we've never gardened and we've never had chickens. And, James is a builder, so he's got that going for him for the structures that we're going to be building on our property. And the rammed earth was new to him, jumped right in and did that. So,
One of the things I've been thinking about is what entrepreneurs do for others, for people that are considering entrepreneurship or considering growing, is it's almost like we're holding a light of hope.
Yeah.
That people can grasp onto and take for themselves. It's, oh, somebody did this, maybe I can do this too. And even just having that thought is enough that it can set people on a path.
Yeah.
And I love that about entrepreneurship.
I think that if you were to ask me what the core of all of my entrepreneurship is, it would be that. It would be that I am just somebody that knows that I can just try. I'm not afraid to try. I'm not afraid to fail as much as other people might be. So I'm just going to do it. And then I hope that other people will follow in my footsteps. And that's what it was like with the peacock. And that's what it's like now.
And so did you learn that lesson from watching your mom for 25 years?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think if you grow up in an entrepreneurial household, you're more inclined to become that way. So before my mom owned the peacock, she was worked in oil and gas. She has an economic degree, and she worked in engineering. She worked, in the 90s in a real male dominated downtown work oil and gas environment, which wasn't favorable to women at that time, and worked her butt off to the top, and ended up in a situation where she just sort of had to throw in the towel because she had two male bosses that were just not letting her get to her potential. And she just said, you know what? I'm going to do something completely different, and found an ad in the Calgary Herald classified, because in the 90s, that's where you looked for stuff. And the Peacock Boutique was for sale. And there was actually a bookstore, the New Age Books and Crystals, that was attached to it. That it was a joined business, and completely changed her life that way. Just went from one extreme to the other and just went for it. She knew nothing about retail. She had never worked in retail. She had never run a business. So yeah, absolutely. That's where I get that from.
This is probably obvious to everybody, but that is incredible to me that you did exactly what your mom did.
Yeah. I'm just kind of having that epiphany right now, actually. Because it's always floating around, but it's never really solidified. But yeah, that is exactly what I mean. Completely different things, but
just you had that modeled to you, that you can leave what you've worked hard for.
Yeah.
You can leave what you've put everything into.
Literally everything.
And make a totally different life for yourself.
Yeah. It'll be okay.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
It makes me think that some of the courage that you needed maybe came from that without even realizing that had been modeled to you in an obvious way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the Peacock Boutique.
Okay.
So your mom does this incredible thing. She finds this ad and she buys this business after she says, I'm done. I'm done with you. Because that's a different time, right? For women in oil and gas, that is a different time.
I can't even imagine how it was. Like, I remember the feeling of how she was. She was so stressed out, and it was just like she was fighting, and she just wasn't happy, And so, yeah, it was the early 90s. Like, I was probably early high school, late junior high kind of age.
Yeah.
So,
So she buys the Peacock Boutique, and then tell me what happens.
I just remember the Peacock was sold to her like as is. And like you had mentioned earlier, it was originally opened by the original owner in 1975. And the decor and the location, like everything was stuck in that time, like literally in 1975, like the wallpaper and the bad carpet and the smell and, and I guess my mom just had this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because it generated money. It was, it was a good business. And so she just rolled with it. And there was a woman actually that had worked for the original owner that was managing it basically. And she was an older Eastern European lady, and she was awesome. So she helped my mom a lot. She did most of the picking because it was consignment, right? So people bring their clothes in, drop them off, and then you have to pick what you want to sell in the store. And so she did a lot of that and the pricing. So she sort of took my mom under her wing and taught her the basics of how the day to day runs. But my mom had to completely figure out how to run a business. And when working in a business day to day is one thing, but running a business behind the scenes is a completely other thing. It's a whole nother job. You've got bills and governments and taxes and ordering and supplies and staff and everything, right? So she had to figure how to do all that out. And it was awesome. I worked there part-time all the way through high school. My girlfriends in high school cleverly called it the old lady blouse shop. So I always had this like idea in my head of right from the get-go that this could be better. This could be such a cool place. Like, it was cool if you were willing to dig and have that sort of thrifty vibe. But I always knew deep down in my soul that if I ever got my hands on this place, whoa, what I would do with it. And sadly, in 2012, late 2012, my mom passed away from a really long battle with cancer. And the business wasn't technically left to me, but I took it because I knew that if I didn't know what was going to happen to it. And I didn't want it to go away. I wanted to take what my mom had done and roll with it and make it better. And just, I don't even know how to describe it. I just wanted to make sure that it would always be around. So a few months after that, I met James, my husband, in January of 2013. And lo and behold, he is a builder and a very creative designer. And we decided to move. Well, they ended up tearing down that building that the Peacock was originally in. So we moved it to a more upscale part of the area that it was in Kensington. And just blew up from there. Just taking all of the clothes that were there and putting it in a nice, clean, stylish shop. It just went skyrocketed.
You got to do all of the things that you had been
Yes,
daydreaming about
since the 90s.
since the 90s.
Like, finally.
25 years
felt
later.
So good. It felt so good. And I knew that it was what my mom wanted to do, but she just didn't have the energy in the end. And I knew she was proud. I knew she was looking down on me the whole time. Still is. And then in the first 3 years that I had it, we opened another location in Beltline. So those two locations were kind of small, like about 1,500 square feet.
Right.
And then in 2019, we opened a big, what do you call it? Like a flagship store, I guess you call it, in Inglewood. So I had always dreamed about Inglewood because Inglewood's had its ups and downs in the last like 20, 30 years in terms of it was a bit scuzzy and then it got really upscale, and Inglewood was finally ready for the Peacock. So we found a perfect location and moved in there in 2019. And this was about 2,400 square feet. Like, it was huge. Actually, it was almost 3,000 square feet. It was huge. So we made a big leap.
That is a lot of consignment.
It was a lot of consignment. And not only that, it was a lot of staff. So It was me and James behind the scenes, of course. And I went from a tight-knit little group of 5 staff that had worked for me for 5+ years. And because they worked for me in the original store too. And I had exploded into like 3 times. I think I had 18 staff at one point. So it got crazy.
That's a lot
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just staff.
No.
You are a relational person.
Yeah.
And so you're not just working with these people, you're in relationship with these people and mentoring them and encouraging them, and you know what's going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was a lot. And it's all women, which is awesome. And but it really became too much for me because I give a lot and I feel a lot, and yeah, it became too much, unfortunately, when I did open that third store. It was gorgeous. We did a grand opening day, and it was, I think, 3 hours. We did like $15,000 in sales. Like, it was wall to wall people in the store. Like, it was amazing. Um, but yeah, just that third location just tipped me over the edge, I think.
Did you have any inkling that if you opened that third store, it would be too much? Or were you just in this dream of Inglewood and this dream of what the Peacock could be?
Both.
Both.
I wanted to expand, and because everything was going so well, and you're like, I want to expand. I want to open a store in Vancouver and Montreal, and you have these wild ideas, but the reality of it, when the reality of it sets in, and when the reality of it set in, it was too late. It was like 2 days before opening day.
Yeah.
James is in there like painting the last wall.
Of course he was.
And I'm like getting the clothes ready, and then I just realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is a lot. But I did it. I buckled down, and I'm like, no, Michelle, like, you made your bed.
You're gonna
We're
lay in
gonna
it.
do this. Yeah, we're gonna do this. We're gonna give this the best, like, college try we can, whatever. We're gonna do this. And I did it. I did it as best as I could, and there were a lot of good, and there was a lot of hardships. And then 2020 happened, and everything shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really hard because the business was on track to do, the business as a whole was on track to do one of our best year yet in sales with
Yeah.
that third location. And so having to lay off all my staff
Which
was
must,
absolutely heartbreaking. It was the first time I couldn't face my staff without my husband by my side. And he had to like take over for me, and we had to sit them all down and be like, sorry guys, like, it was like firing my whole staff at once. It was awful.
well, and you want him there because you want the emotional support,
Mm-hmm.
because these people that you're talking to mean something to you,
Yeah.
and you know about their life,
Yeah.
and you know what the job means to them.
Yeah. And you're responsible in such a huge way for so many things for them, because you're paying their paycheck,
Yeah.
like, because they're working for you. They have their apartment and their car. And so it was really hard, that shutdown. And luckily, there was government subsidies and whatnot, but the shutdown in 2020, when I didn't have a job to go to, nobody did, was what actually led us to where we are today, strangely enough.
So the world is shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
You've closed the doors to the Peacock Boutique. Were you online at that point? Like, did you have your clothes online? So
Yeah.
did you sell online?
Yeah.
Or okay, so
We did.
So that was potentially still happening,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't the lion's share of your business. The
No.
lion's share was people coming into the store and going through
Yeah.
and purchasing directly, and
Yeah.
which you would I think you would probably expect for consignment.
Yeah.
And,
It's definitely, because everything's one of a kind. So it's a little bit more tricky to be online, but we had a pretty big social media following on Instagram. And we also had our website. So that's what we ended up turning to and that kept the lights on basically in the store for the however months we were shut down, 3 months, I think it was that income that was coming in. And I had a few girls that would come in and do Instagram stories and stuff and sell things and fulfill online purchases. But yeah, it was sad. It was really sad.
So what part of it was sad for you?
Just shutting it down. I remember it was the day that the government mandates came and said, all businesses need to be closed. And I had gone into the Inglewood store to open it up for the day, and there was literally tumbleweed rolling down.
Because it's Alberta.
Because it's Alberta. But Inglewood's usually like traffic.
Traffic.
We were right on 9th Avenue, like right on the main drag. And I remember looking out the window. It was just so ominous. There was nobody on the streets. It was the first big, like, there was a pandemic, everybody stay home. And it was just so sad. And I just closed. It was 3:00 in the afternoon, like on a Saturday. There was nobody there. It was just so odd. I just closed the doors, and there's nothing that I could do. Yeah. But so that happened in when did everything shut down? In March of 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
I opened the store in May of 2019. So it had only been open for a year,
Yeah.
that location.
So everything's closed and you came here.
Yeah,
Because why would you stay in the city?
exactly. Thank goodness I didn't want to stay in the city. But James has family out at Ty Lake because he's from there. And we ended up getting to stay at a place at Ty Lake. And that was the first time I had spent any time out here. James grew up out there and fell in love with it. I don't know what else to say. I absolutely felt I had the best summer of my life. Yeah, it felt like home.
And so different from the life that you'd been living.
Yeah. Yeah, which was very stressful, rewarding, but stressful, fast-paced. And I felt before even the COVID happened, I was starting to really feel that like grind of the city wearing on me. Just that the noise, and Calgary's grown so much and it still is. And I've grew up there my whole life. So it just felt I just I didn't know what else to do, but I was definitely feeling the sirens and the lights, and everything was just a little bit too much. So coming out to the lake was just so nice. The quiet, the loons, the crickets, the stars.
Well, and then you add to that feeling that you had a few days before you opened your flagship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've created a monster. I mean, it's
I
not
literally
really a
had
monster,
created
but I think sometimes when you're ambitious and you're goal driven and
Yeah.
you're motivated, that we make plans. Our present self makes plans for the future, not realizing how our future self is going to feel about the plans that
Oh,
our present
totally.
self is making.
Totally.
And we don't always know when to dial it back
Mm-hmm.
because that's where we're going.
Yeah.
Like
And there's no one to blame because you did it.
Yes, that's
So
the
like it's your
worst
fault.
part.
Not that you would, but
Oh, I
yeah.
would, Michelle. I'm happy to blame
Yeah.
someone else if I
Well,
can get off the hook.
I remember saying to James, I'm like, how did you let me do this? And he's like, you can do it, babe. And I'm like, okay. My biggest cheerleader. But yeah.
So you get to the lake.
Mm-hmm.
When did you know that you needed to not leave the lake? Because the
Oh,
world didn't close forever.
no, I think it was only 3 months. And then what ended up happening was we would just go home because we had the lake for 2 summers at the end.
Yeah.
And so once everything opened back up, I remember, the big announcement, okay, the businesses can open back up. And then that's a whole can of worms because I got to get all my staff back and who wants to come back and who can and who can't and where is everybody, and
Yeah.
just trying to, and with the 3 locations, it was really tough to just wrangle everybody back to get back to work. And does everybody feel safe to come back to work? There was just so many things. And I remember really not wanting to come back. I remember sitting down on the dock at the lake and crying really hard because I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to go back there. I want to stay here. So that's when I knew. I'd never felt so strongly about anything in my life.
Wow.
So that's when I knew I was going to go back and I was going to figure out a way to be out here where I am now for the rest of my life, no matter what it takes. And that ended up being the hardest decision I ever had to make.
So what part was hard? Because you just said that you knew you needed to do it. So that sounds like there wasn't a wrestling.
No.
Do you know what? Like it's
But
not like you were back and forth about, like, it's
No.
like it dropped into you and
Yeah.
you knew without a doubt that
Yeah.
your life needed to change and this
Yeah.
is how it needed to change.
Yeah.
So what were you wrestling with?
The legacy part of the business, the fact that it was my mom's, and what would I do with a business, and would I be able to run the business from afar? Would the business survive without me? If I was to sell the business, who would I sell it to? So many things.
So much uncertainty.
But the 2 main things were letting down my mom, feeling like I was going to let her down, and my current family, I have 2 brothers and a dad.
Because this
And
is part of their legacy.
yeah,
Like, even though they weren't running the boutique for the
yeah.
last 10 years,
I kept the torch going, and
yeah,
they loved that. Yeah.
because it kept them close to your
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah. And it was like the peacock was always there. And that's where Michelle was. James was another factor because he just poured there was blood, sweat, and tears in every single one of those stores of each of those things. All the work and love that he put into building me those shops. That was a tough one. And then the staff, like feeling like I was going to let down the staff. So those were the three main factors that I had to get over
And come to grips with.
Yeah.
So which of those carried the most weight? Because because it sounds like you knew.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I have some decisions to make, meaning, am I going to keep the store even though I'm not there?
Yeah.
And will that business model work? Because you've always been invested in the Peacock.
Like I've always been there all the time.
Yeah.
It was always Michelle at the store.
That was your life.
Yeah.
And the people that you were working with, those were your relationships, right? And and your husband was there helping you. Like, I can see how it's such a big part of your life. So looking at, can this run on itself, means that you have to have somebody there.
Yeah.
And that somebody isn't you.
Yeah.
Right? So
then
then
how can you find somebody that's just like you? You can't.
You can't.
I won't go any deeper into this. I tried and it didn't work.
Well, and I think part of that is because it wasn't just a business.
Yeah.
This was your life.
Yeah.
And it represented the sacrifice and the life that your mom lived. Right? So there's a lot of weight that this person coming in gets it right.
And that was the biggest thing, was when I decided to sell, which was about 2 years after we had moved out here. I did go back and forth. I did try to have somebody run it. It didn't work. Finding somebody, like, who am I going to find that's going to want to take what I've built, what everybody's built, and carry that on, take that torch and carry on and keep the legacy part of it. Well, lo and behold, we found someone. Thank you, universe. And when I very first met her, she's a mom, stay-at-home mom that her kids were all grown up and in school, and she wanted to do something that was basically exactly the Peacock and have something to pass on to her kids. And it just worked out, like the stars literally aligned. I think James made one phone call to a business associate that he had met and done some work for in Calgary, and he got us in touch with this couple, and they ended up being the people that bought the store. And when I first met her, one of the first things that I told her was that I wanted to sell it to somebody who would carry it on as a legacy business, and she just started crying. So it was a done deal right at that moment.
Well, and I'm just so struck by her decision to purchase the Peacock was like your mom's decision to purchase the Peacock. Like, I don't want the life that I've been living. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but I need to change my life.
She needed something for her.
Yeah. And I want something that I can share with future. Like that sounds so much like what your mom did when she took over the Peacock.
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible.
I know. Yeah, it's really cool. She's doing amazing with it. I peek in on their social media every once in a while, not too much, but I'm just absolutely thrilled, and she's loving it. She did an interview like this, actually, that I got to watch, and it was kind of interesting because it was like watching me like 10 years ago. Yeah, it was really cool.
Like at the beginning when you
exactly.
when you were first starting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what legacy is about.
Yeah.
It's about that continuation of this story and it being a gift. How did you hold the piece? Because it sounds like when you found that person, you knew you could release it.
Yeah.
But talk to me about the piece that this was your mom's.
Like letting go of the fact that it was my mom's.
Because it started out as her salvation.
Yeah.
The Peacock.
Yeah.
But in conversations that you've had with me in the past, it didn't end that way for her.
Mm-hmm. I think because of what I'm doing now, I knew she would be so proud of me
Mm.
that I was able to forgive myself and let go of the mom piece attached to it, because I felt like I did everything that I could, that I had the capacity to do in keeping the business alive, and then pass the torch to the right person that I knew 100% without a doubt was. And then I'm going on to do things that are equally, if not better,
Hmm.
with my life, and taking everything that I learned from her and from the experience that I had at the store and moving forward with that. And I just knew in my heart 100% that she would be, if she was alive, she would be 100% had my back.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's part of the being able to release it was knowing it was going to the right person.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Oh,
that's what made it
absolutely.
okay.
I never would have. I just had this conversation with my brother. He's visiting. And I've told him this before, but I said, I would never have sold the business to just anyone. And he said, I know.
Hmm.
Even if it would have taken 10 years, I would have, struggled through and waited for the right person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you've left that,
Mm-hmm.
that struggle that you had around it, it seems like that must be gone now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like there's nothing left in terms of the angst
No.
or the struggle. Like
No.
releasing the peacock, it was hard. You knew you needed to do it, but once it was the right time,
Mm-hmm.
meaning with the right person,
Yeah.
You were able to let go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And sometimes I sit there and I'm like, am I okay with this? And I'm like, I am. I am okay with this. Like yeah, that's a big thing, because some people have regret, or people ask me that all the time. Do you regret that decision? I can tell you 100,000,000,000% no.
well, and it's such a funny thing. Like if people that don't know you, if they look at this, like this is a 180. Like we're
Yeah.
talking somebody that is involved in fashion,
Yeah.
living in a big city,
Yeah.
managing 3 stores, owning these stores, like, and now you're talking to chickens
Uh-huh.
in the Kootenays.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is such a different life.
Yeah, digging potatoes in my bare feet, walking around in the forest with my bare feet, like totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
But I don't get the sense that it's a departure from who you are.
I was always, if you ask anyone that I know, I'm a hippie. I'm a hippie at heart. I've always been a hippie. Whenever I lived in this city, any chance that I could get out to nature, I would take it.
Mm.
But yeah, I have some people that have met me out here that really think I went from that like city girl to farm girl just really quickly. But the true essence of me is I love to be in nature. I love animals. Growing food to me is just like a miracle. Like, so I guess I was good at my job in the city and my life in the city. I was good at that and I enjoyed it, but I'm also good at this.
Mm.
And the true essence of who I am is, I guess, very diverse. But my sister-in-law, who I don't get to see as much as I want to, told me they're visiting from Tasmania, Australia, and so I hadn't seen her in a year. And she watched me for about a week on my property, and she said, "Do you know what I feel like, Michelle? I feel like you're in your inner child phase. Like you're finally in a space in your life in your mid-40s that your inner child is finally coming out." So it's always been there. It's just this is the phase of my life that I get to explore that.
Mm. Well, and shedding off some of the expectations and the pressures
Mm-hmm.
and just getting
Mm-hmm.
to explore and learn
Yeah.
and make mistakes along the way.
Yeah, and not have the staff, the burden of all of the people relying on me. That's all shed, and that feels really nice.
You know what? That's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
When you're an entrepreneur and you have staff
Mhm.
and you feel responsible for the life that they're living. Like you feel
Oh.
responsible for their livelihood
Mhm.
because you care.
Yeah,
And
and I did.
they're like family,
Mhm.
or about their, like it's a different way of working now,
Yeah.
and there is a weight to that.
A huge weight. I I I don't know. I feel like I felt it harsh,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I bet you a lot of people do. Some people don't. Some people don't care at all, but I did.
Yeah.
And so being able to not have that on my shoulders was a huge relief because it kept me up at night. I lost sleep. You know, there was a lot of stressors. There's a lot of great, but there was a lot of stressors. So yeah, just being in the full essence of me and doing what I waking up in the morning and doing what I want every day and figuring out how to make a business out of that is amazing.
You're having the time of your life.
I really am.
Well, and the element of play,
Yeah.
like what you were saying about your sister-in-law talking about it being like your inner child coming
Mhm.
out. There's so much freedom to play
Mhm.
when it's you
Yeah.
and your partner and
Yeah.
you're on this land and you've got your birds and
Yeah.
your dogs.
And there's so much potential. Like there's so much that we can do on our property. There's so much potential. We bought a piece of property that is beautiful in its bareness, but needed to be built up. And that's all that we want to do. And so the possibilities of what we can do on our property are really endless between James and I. Like we've got at least 20, 25 years of projects.
Well, and you touched on something that I think is a common experience for a lot of entrepreneurs. You said, I could do that well, or I can do this well.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times for entrepreneurs, there's lots of different things that they could do.
Yeah.
And at some point, we have to be selective
Mhm.
because otherwise, we end up in a situation where we have 3 stores.
Yeah.
You know, and it
Exactly.
starts to take away from who we need to be,
Yeah.
you know, because it adds all this pressure and all this stress. But I guess what I'm trying to touch on is just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Mhm.
But when you're growth focused, it's hard to realize that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, but I can.
Yeah.
Oh, we should do this.
I
Like,
know.
I'm very much like that
Yeah.
as well. But what's really great, I think, now that you're at Thai, is that the growth is all right there on the
Mhm.
property,
Mhm.
you know, and there's so much opportunity to expand,
Yeah.
but it doesn't seem like it'll have the same burden piece
No.
that the store did.
No. It won't. It won't. And we can take things like right now we have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 projects that are in the works that aren't done. Like we have a sauna and we have a greenhouse and we have a chicken coop, and then we have a carriage house that are all like kind of done. So yeah, I think James is the one that's biting off a little more than he can chew right now. So I just try to keep him like task oriented. Um,
Keep feeding him.
yeah, he's just so thrilled to have the space to do what he wants. Like he's been a home builder for 25 years and he's never built himself a home. And I mean, that's what we're doing right now on our property is we're going to build a round earth home. We're going to build a carriage house first and then we're going to build a round earth home.
Because you're both entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you were both entrepreneurs when you met each
Yeah.
other. You both had your own businesses.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing that you did.
Yeah.
He left his home building business in Calgary when he came. And
He did. Mm-hmm.
I mean, his pivot wasn't quite as
no.
obvious, I guess, because
No.
he continued to build here.
Yeah.
But it's still a change, right? Like
his biggest challenge was finding, he had 25 years of trades that he had built up in the city. And those trades, those good trades like electricians and plumbers and painters and tilers, when you find good ones, you don't let them go. And so that was his biggest challenge out here was he knew how to do it, but he can't do everything. He can't do all the things. So he had to find the people out here. And so there were some challenges for him as well, for sure.
Well, and he's like you in that he's relational.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of that trade relationship is also relational.
It didn't take him that long.
No, I was going to say, I wouldn't think it would.
No, yeah.
So where are you going from here? Because would you say that what you're doing is a business?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what a business is. Mm-hmm. So is the Thai Life Homestead a business? Do you recognize it as that?
Yep.
And how did you, like, because you didn't start out thinking you were going to have a business.
No.
So how did this evolve?
I think when you are an entrepreneur, you always are an entrepreneur. you, you are always looking for ways to live your life and do the things that you love and make a business, a life out of it, like not having to go outside for work. So when we got this property, there's nothing but potential, like I said. So we want to grow these gardens that we've never grown before, and we want to raise these chickens that we've never raised before, and we want to build these buildings in these building methods like rammed earth that not very many people have done in North America, and nor have we. And we just see that as an opportunity to share with people. So we started our YouTube channel. It was 2021, January 2022. So we had lived on our property for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing things. James started building a reciprocal framed Hobbit hut roof, and we're doing all the, and I'm like, we should be sharing this. Like, this is some cool stuff that we're doing here. So that started the YouTube channel. And I mean, YouTube's a tough game. Like, you have to be on YouTube, and you have to be really committed to YouTube to make money on YouTube. So that's, something that will probably be lucrative in the next 5 years. But then we wanted to do the rammed earth. So we started doing the rammed earth. And, when you're doing something, a different kind of building method in a small community, word travels really fast.
Yes.
And so we have people that come visit our property all the time. And James has actually gotten, I think, 3 or 4 big building projects out of just the fact that we're building rammed earth on our property, and they're interested in what we're doing and perhaps having rammed earth done, or just think that James is really cool that he's doing something like that. Like, this guy must know what he's doing, which he does. So it's just sort of evolved from there. The garden that I grew, like my first greenhouse, was small and just enough for us to eat basically in the summer, greens and tomatoes and stuff like that. And then when we expanded our big garden, it was a little, not enough to sell veggies full time, like have a farm stand
Right.
7 days a week, but a little bit too much for us to consume. So I started the Thai Life Veggie Co. last summer, just in the Hobbit hut that I just talked about that we made. And we made signs, and people would come by on the weekends, and I used my sweet merchandising skills that I learned from the Peacock to make everything look pretty and design a logo and stickers, and it was awesome. And just doing what I want to do and figuring out a way to make a living out of it is just what we're doing. And now we have a workshop going on our property for rammed earth, and that it's just the connections that you make with people, and who knows where we'll end up. Like, I know we'll be fine. I have no question. The 1,300 square foot year-round greenhouse out of rammed earth that we're building right now, this winter will be our first test to see if we can grow food year round. Yeah. And that's sort of my big ticket item that I'm really counting on, because I want to be able to grow as much as I can, but I'm going to try to focus on specific things like that people can't find around here year round, that like tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, potentially fruit, and be that person that can provide that for the community of the East Kootenays. Fresh, amazing organic produce year round. So that's my goal.
Well, because we live in, like, we have a lot of winter.
Yeah. Like, mostly winter.
And we have some incredible growing that happens here and close to us.
Incredible. Yeah.
Through the summer, but being able to grow in the winter would be incredible.
Yeah.
Part of what your experience was when you came from the city to the Kootenays is that you realize how little you need. And it sounds like you knew that anyways, right? But just this ability to take care of yourself and your community around you, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think what's amazing is it lends this idea to other people that they too could do that. Not that they necessarily need to grow food, but that they could do something that they've been wanting to do.
Yeah.
That seems out of the box, that seems so bizarre or unusual, and that's what I love about women's stories and entrepreneurship stories, is because I think we need hope, and I think we need inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean we all need to do the same thing by any means, but when people are doing things that are unusual, it's, oh, okay, and it
Yeah.
just kind of sheds light on the possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true that like a lot of people just are conditioned to think that they have to go to school and get a degree, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you're put into this kind of like a box when in my in my mind, people are best at doing the things that they love to do.
I'm so
And
glad you said
yeah,
that.
that you're going to be the best at doing what you love. So if you can figure out a way to do that, like I love gardening. And guess what? I grow really good stuff. Like, and it's amazing what I'm doing. And it's because I love it. And there's no reason why you can't figure out a way to do what you love and still make money and live and not have to go begrudgingly to a job that you dislike and get a paycheck and take your 2 weeks, and your life could just be doing what you love and living your life to the fullest every day.
That's the appeal of entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what this is about for
Mm-hmm.
me too.
Mm-hmm.
That life can be a source of joy.
Yeah.
And work can be a source of joy where it doesn't even feel like work.
Yeah.
It can all just be living.
Yeah.
And living well.
Yeah. And you can change things. Like, you don't have to do the same thing all the time. Like when I ran the Peacock, I loved running the Peacock. Like, I loved it. I was just on cloud nine. I'd wake up every day so happy to go to work. And one day I didn't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to do something else. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
I'm really glad that you shared that, because when you were saying how much you love gardening, that was my question. Well, did you love being in the Peacock?
Yeah, I loved it.
Well, and I think that that's an amazing thing to say, because I think we can, when we build a business, it's kind of your baby to some degree.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
And I think that there can be a lot of weight when you feel like you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because yeah, it was like something you once loved. It's like an ex-lover. It's your baby that turns into an ex-lover. That seems really weird, but it's true. Like, sometimes you just got to move on. You change, you evolve throughout your life as well, and your interests changed, and your energy levels changed too. I remember my mom always saying that about the Peacock. Like, you really have to be into what you're doing, like really passionate about fashion and consignment, and be a people person, but you have to have a lot of energy. And I think that's what ended up happening was I got tired, and I didn't have everything that I could give to it. And now at the homestead, it's like, now I'm my inner child, and I have nothing but energy to
well, and you can
do what I
pace
love.
yourself.
Yeah, I can.
In a way that honors where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Well, one of the things that's come up in some of the conversations that I've been having with women is the fear related to doing things. But when I look at you and I look at the decision you made, that doesn't seem to come up in the same way that I see it coming up for other women. And I think that I'm not sure, but I think that there's a part of the way that you see the world that has enabled you to move through things. You seem to have an openness about the future. And I think that openness has allowed this fluidity in your life, that you can really love the Peacock, but it doesn't mean that you have to love it forever.
Yeah.
Or that you have to do it forever.
Yeah.
Even though it sounds like you got totally sidelined that was going to change. Like, it didn't sound like prior to that you knew that was coming.
No, I didn't really.
Even though you knew that it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
That last year feeling like it wasn't okay, but it seemed like it just like smacked you.
Yeah, it did. It did. Because I knew something was off, and then what smacked me was the realization of coming out to the lake and thinking, like, could I live here? Like, this is where I feel really good right now. So could I make a life here? That was the realization. But how I navigate through life, and always have, is I follow my gut, and I just trust. I trust in myself, and I trust in the universe. And I just know that if I feel something as strongly as I did about that, that it will work out in some way. It doesn't mean that there's not work involved to make that happen, but it will work out. I'll make it happen.
Right.
No, I'm
And
very strong that way.
and was your mom like that?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Because that decision she made to purchase the peacock sounds like that kind of a decision.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I
No.
gotta go.
You're leaving a 6-figure job, income job, and that you've been schooled, went through university to do, to purchase a business, like invest money in a business and not have any idea if you're going to be able to run it. Like that was my mom in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
So again, yeah, seeing her do that, it's just part of me. Guess I'm very much like her.
Yeah. Well, and knowing that I've seen this other woman follow her gut in this way and make these decisions for her life, it almost gives us permission.
Yeah.
To do that, or you permission to do that. Like, I can make a decision from this. I don't have to know where I'm going. Because you didn't see the Thai Life homestead when you left.
No.
You didn't see the round earth. Like,
No.
you guys didn't even really know what that was.
No.
Or that you knew that you were going to be selling vegetables or trying to grow year round. It was
no idea. If you had asked me if you had told me in 2019 that this is what I would be doing in 2023, I would have thought you were crazy. But not completely out of the question. Maybe I would be into that. Yeah.
Which then begs the question of, I guess it's not so much a question, but more of an observation in that we don't really know what's coming, you know, but we know it's going to be good.
Yeah. And I want anybody that's watching this to know that if you feel something strongly in your gut and in your heart to make a change, to do something for yourself, you should do it. Like, you shouldn't hold back. It's not going to be easy. Some people aren't going to understand, like, that are close to you, as to why you're doing it. Hopefully you have support like I had with James, with my husband. But you should absolutely do it, because life is just too short. And I know that with my mom. She was 54 when she died, which is less than 10 years older than I am now. So do what you love. Don't struggle through. Don't make life hard. Am I making you cry?
Yes.
So don't make.
You're not crying. I'm crying.
Yeah. Don't settle. Just move forward. And life is just too short to not do what you love. And if you believe in something and you work hard, it will work out. That's my advice.
And you wish your mom knew that.
Yeah, she
before.
does. She did. She does. She did.
Yeah.
She did it. She did it. Yeah.
When she left.
Yeah.
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 And the reality of losing her at such a young age really solidified that you needed to leave the peacock when you did.
Exactly.
Because that year leading up to it was putting you on a path that you knew wasn't going to be okay for you in the long run.
And I didn't mention this before, but when about a year before, or 2 years before she passed, she wanted to sell the peacock too. And unfortunately, her husband, my stepdad, he didn't want to. It was his whole life. Like, he was involved in business as well. And he didn't want to. And so she struggled through, and lucky that they didn't, because it gave me all of this, what we've just talked about. But when I wanted to sell, I knew that she would have had my back, because I didn't know how she felt back then exactly, but when it happened to me, I knew how she felt.
You're like, oh, yeah, probably could feel the full weight that she felt.
And anybody out there that's watching this, like, you know when you're ready, and don't suffer. Just move on.
Yeah. Whether it's scary or not, whether you know what's coming or not, when you know that you need to go, just go.
Yeah. The ramifications of not, I think, are more harmful in just stress and anxiety, and that all wears on you, and that can turn into not so good things health-wise, and it's just not a good situation. So I don't want to end on a dark note.
it doesn't feel dark to me, because that message of, if you need to leave, leave, is full of light, because you're an example of what happens when you do what you need to do. And the life that you're living now is a reflection of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I feel like what the life that I'm living now is what she would have wanted to do when she wanted to sell the peacock. They wanted to buy a boat and sail around the world, and not exactly the same, but yeah. So that is good. It is good.
But have some freedom, and and be able to be living the life that you want to live. Yeah. I'm so thankful that you came today and that you shared your story. I love hearing about the Peacock Boutique and your transformation to the Thai Lake homestead. It's just such an incredible story, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of something when I hear your story, because it feels like it's just beginning.
It is.
And that part is so exciting.
It really is just beginning.
And because you had no idea what you were doing, I'm like, we have no idea what you're going to do next. Yeah. Like, it just feels like this could go anywhere.
It could. But it'll go places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that without a shadow of a doubt. It already is. But like I said, the possibilities are really endless.
So thank you for taking the time. It
was a
pleasure to talk with you, Michelle.
Pleasure is all mine.